We've been talking together about how to create constructive conflict rather than destructive conflict, or productive conflict rather than destructive conflict. And we've been talking especially about William Urey's notion that when you're trying to get past no, when you're trying to get to the point where you can get some kind of agreement with somebody who doesn't want to agree with you, he's talked about five different strategies that you can pursue, and we're on number 3. The first one was don't react, get on the balcony. The second one was don't argue, step to their side. The third is don't escalate, educate. And in my particular world, I have come to describe this as de-escalate. I don't know if de-escalate is actually a word, but over and over again, that is a word that I keep at the front of my mind. Every time I'm in conflict, what I'm trying to do is to de-escalate. And what I think about is Heifetz's notion that a holding environment is one where it's uncomfortable enough where you cannot stand still, and safe enough that you can experiment with a new way of being. In other words, that there are times when you turn up the heat and turn down the heat till you get to a productive level. Often what happens is conflict turns up the heat so much that I have to find a way to de-escalate, to turn down the heat enough that somebody can experiment with a new way of being, so where someone can find a way to be productive. And oftentimes what that means is that we end up educating as much about the process as it is about the content. So that's why I say to somebody at the beginning, let's agree that you get to talk as long as you need to, and I'm going to understand you. And what we're doing there is I'm educating them on a process. I don't say to them, okay, I'm going to take charge here, and I'm going to be in charge of the process. What I do is I say, I want to create a process that puts them at an advantage. They get to speak first, and they get to speak as long as it takes until they feel understood. What I'm trying to do is I recognize that oftentimes this idea of don't escalate, educate is about power and authority. Oftentimes what happens is that there's an asymmetrical power relationship between me and the person I'm dealing with. Either they have more power than me, or they have less power than me. And in either way, that gets in the way. If they have less power than me, then they think that I'm going to use my power to club them, to get my way. And what I can do is, that's why it's so important to hand them the sword. That's why it's so important to say, I'm going to let you talk until you feel understood. And the until you feel understood is a way of handing over authority to them, even if they think they don't deserve it, because they think I have some kind of authority over them. But what if the person or the group I'm dealing with has authority over me? Well, part of what they're going to be wondering is, am I going to try and steal authority from them? And so what I do at that point is I say, okay, we're going to go until you feel understood. In other words, I'm going to recognize your authority. Now, if it's somebody who has formal authority over me, if it's somebody who is my boss, one of the things I will say out loud is, I recognize you are my boss, and I am obligated to do what you tell me to do. And then I'm going to say, and I want to listen to you as long as it takes so that you feel understood. I do want to say what I think is right, but I want to start by listening to you. In both cases, what I've done is I've educated them about the process in such a way that I've told them that they get to retain some kind of power and authority. And in so doing, I have made it so that it's no longer about grabbing for power. The other thing about de-escalating is we have to recognize threats don't work. Oftentimes I want to take this idea of educating and say, what I want to educate you to is that if you don't give me my way, bad things will happen to you. Well, that's not educating, that's a threat. And you have to recognize that threats don't work. The harder you make it for someone to say no, the harder it will be for them to say yes. Your goal is still a mutually agreed upon solution. It's not a victory. And if I crush them, that's not a mutually agreed upon solution, that's a victory. And I have to recognize that over and over again, my goal is something that's mutually agreed upon. And so in doing that, I can't use threats, because threats are designed to get a victory. Threats are not designed to get a mutually agreed upon solution. So William Urey would argue that the third strategy we need to develop in getting past no is don't escalate, educate.